Scientists use their minds to deny the existence of mind. Isn't that perverse? Scientists, people with a religious faith in matter, can be driven insane by just one idea: that eternal and necessary mind exists. Leibniz, a mathematical and philosophical genius, infinitely more intelligent than any of today's science fanboys, gave a brilliant proof for the existence of God. When I say God, I really mean a perfect mind, or a collection of perfect minds. Bertrand Russell gave a decent introduction to Leibniz's argument. Russell wrote, roughly, the argument is this. Such a statement as, "it is raining," is sometimes true and sometimes false, but 2 and 2 are 4, is always true. All statements that have only to do with essence, not with existence, are either always true or never true. Those that are always true are called eternal truths. The gist of the argument is that truths are part of the contents of minds, and that an eternal truth must be part of the content of an eternal mind. "It is raining" is a temporal and contingent truth, which ceases to be true when the rain stops. 2 + 2 = 4 is an eternal and necessary truth. It can never not be true. Eternal and necessary truths by definition must have an eternal and necessary ontology. They must inhere in something. Leibniz said that what they inhered in was an eternal mind, that of God. Of course, they can inhere in many eternal minds, not just one. So, God is actually a hive God, a hive mind, made of Leibnizian monads. Leibniz talked of an eternal God monad creating temporal monadic minds, but that position can easily be modified to support a collection of eternal monadic minds, each one ontologically conveying the eternal and necessary truths of mathematics. Although no scientist on Earth can actually refute this argument, it's irrefutably true. Every scientist on Earth nevertheless rejects it and trolls it. Because it is the ultimate heresy and blasphemy for science. It destroys science and proves that mathematics, not science, is what reality is all about. Scientists, despite using math all the time and being wholly dependent on it, actually have a phobia for math. They despise the idea that reality is mathematical rather than material. It is the ultimate insult to their religious devotion to irrational materialism. Scientists believe that math is an unreal, man-made abstraction. They claim that humans just invented math one fine day. Their position amounts to a deranged claim that there was a time when 2 + 2 did not equal 4. After all, if math didn't exist before some science fanboy invented it, as scientists laughably believe, then there must have been a time when 2 + 2 didn't exist, hence didn't equal anything. That's genuinely what scientists believe. Where was 2 + 2 = 4 before the Big Bang? They say excitedly. Well, it was encoded in eternal minds, of course. Duh! But scientists, as we know, refuse to accept an eternal and necessary mathematical order pre-existing the scientific universe and thus science itself. Science is a strange religious belief in the temporal and contingent, which entails a fanatical and irrational denial of the eternal and necessary. As soon as you accept the existence of the eternal and necessary truths, as you will do if you are remotely rational and logical, unlike scientists, with their weird faith in temporal and contingent matter, then you automatically realize that eternal and necessary mathematical monadic minds exist, and these are none other than the foundational fiber and fabric of existence, i.e. mathematical mind is the root of everything and explains everything. Scientists can't disprove this argument in any way, but their religious faith causes them to reject it instantly. Well, all of them are on the spectrum, if you know what I mean, and open-minded rational and logical thinking is definitely not their thing. These are people with an obsessive compulsion to believe in temporal and contingent matter and to reject eternal and necessary math. What they want to believe in is temporal and contingent unreal math, invented as an abstraction by humans to support science. Ho! 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 How absurd can you get? Did humans invent prime numbers and circles, the number pi, and Euler's formula? Or have these always existed? If these have always existed, and of course they always have, how can temporal and contingent science be true?
It would have to be a secondary, derived subject, owing everything to math, as indeed it does.
You can't argue with people of faith, and that includes scientists.
You will never be able to dent their belief in matter and their hatred of the devil, the mind. Russell wrote, "There is already an argument not unlike this in Plato, where he deduces immortality from the eternity of the ideas."
But in Leibniz the argument is more developed.
He holds that the ultimate reason for contingent truths must be found in necessary truths. And this is absolutely true.
Go on. Every scientist on Earth proved that there are no eternal and necessary truths, only temporal and contingent truths. Prove that the eternal and necessary does not precede and cause the temporal and contingent. Prove that the temporal and contingent order is predicated on infinite temporal and contingent regress. Good luck with that. Or prove that the temporal and contingent is randomly plucked from non-existence. Even better luck with that one. Russell wrote, "The argument here is as in the cosmological argument. There must be a reason for the whole contingent world, and this reason cannot itself be contingent, but must be sought among eternal truths. But a reason for what exists must itself exist. Therefore eternal truths must, in some sense, exist, and they can only exist as thoughts in the mind of God. Actually, they don't exist as thoughts in the mind of God.
Eternal and necessary mathematics exists as eternal and necessary mathematical monadic minds, all of them defined by the God equation, namely Euler's formula." Russell said, "This argument is really only another form of the cosmological argument. It is, however, open to the further objection that a truth can hardly be said to exist in a mind which apprehends it. The truth doesn't exist in the mind as something apprehended. The truth is the mind. The mind is a mathematical ontology."
Russell, a fanatical empiricist and science fanboy, was never able to understand Leibniz, a towering genius far above Russell's level and also that of all science fanboys with their spectrum belief in sensory truth and no other truth. Scientists rant and rail against rationalism, the historical philosophical enemy of empiricism. They cannot abide the concept of a rational and logical order that precedes all sensory data. It drives them mad. Just look at the trolling comments they make whenever they come across anyone asserting that reality is mathematical, rational, and not scientific, empirical. They can't bear it. They pull out all their hair and gnash their teeth, just like all religious believers who cannot defeat reason and logic. The argument from eternal truths formally falsifies science. But, of course, you need to rationally and logically accept the existence of eternal and necessary truths, and scientists, who oppose reason and logic, do not. They claim that only temporal and contingent empirical truths exist and that there are no such things as eternal and necessary rational truths, i.e., in order to defend science, they claim that mathematics doesn't exist.
They are 100% wrong.
It's mathematics that exists and science that is an unreal, man-made abstraction, invented by humans in the last few hundred years. And just contemplate how much trolling we receive from science fanboys for telling them this most unwelcome truth. Russell was right when he said, "Mathematics takes us still further from what is human, into the region of absolute necessity, to which not only the actual world, but every possible world, must conform." Russell said that when he was rational and logical, before he succumbed to the idiocy of materialism and empiricism. We need to save intelligent humans from the pernicious doctrines of irrationalism, with which science is full because it supports empiricism and rejects rationalism.
Bizarrely, scientists believe they can be both empiricists and rationalists.
They cannot. You must choose between empiricism and materialism, science and rationalism and idealism, mathematics.
Make your choice.